future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
Hello, everyone. Dr. Judy here of WTF, Dr. Judy WTF with the Freud, and welcome to the show. And we're going to go pretty global and deeper and cross-cultural tonight. And we're going to be doing a show basically on the isms, in this case, racism. And the show is titled... What is it titled? It is titled, we're going to have a special guest on tonight, Violet, and Violet is going to be calling in, and she is, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, an Ojibwa native, and she was raised in Canada, in British Columbia, and adopted by Caucasian women, and the name of the show tonight is called Racism, Collective Narcissism, a case study with Violet, an Ojibwa First Nations woman. So I want to introduce another version of the mind map, which is a more global version. For those of you who don't know, the mind map was originally intended to heal global disconnect and create a pathway to create a united humanity. And I don't think we have quite accomplished that purpose as a human race. And I want to direct you to another website that I don't advertise too often. It's a website called healingglobaldisconnect.com. And the mission statement of Healing Global Disconnect is the following. As a human race, we have become fragmented into nations, religions, social classes, politics, and races. This fragmentation has resulted in clash and fallout in the form of human atrocities. Although we have been able to soar to unlimited heights in many areas of human endeavor, we have yet to accomplish the final and most important frontier, to come together as a united humanity. And tonight we have the opportunity to speak to a woman who has gone through a lot. She was adopted. As I mentioned, by Caucasian people, and she was subject to a lot of racism. And she's going to be calling in to the show shortly. Before she does, I want to introduce the Mind Map, the Psychological Healing Center, which is a place where mind map therapy is delivered as a pathway to healing. And the mind map originally was intended to heal global disconnect and ended up being my model to heal human disconnect. So we're going to go from micro to macro, and on a macro basis, it breaks down to the following mind map. And if you could please put that mind map up so I can read it to the audience. And so the top third of the mind map represents our darkness as a human race and our potential to break through the darkness and limited thinking and essentially racism and capture our light. And then the third panel, if you can blow it up a little bit so I can read it to the audience, represents how we have encoded into the beginning of the encoding of the isms. Let there be human beings, except that in this case, the human beings have differentiated, and as you can see from panels 4, 5, and 6, we as a human race are in chaos. We're a bunch of isms, meaning we have not yet come together as a united humanity. And by isms, I mean all the races, religions, politics, and so on, that instead of usually being respected, they become a point of polarization, and then we end up breaking down as a human race into a clash of the isms. And from a macro perspective, what the purpose is to come together in panel 7 as an interconnected, united humanity, and to heal globally, and eventually create a more unified and peaceful planet. So I'm looking forward to Violet's call. I want to read to you a little bit about the Ojibwa people, and please forgive me if I'm not pronouncing this correctly. The Ojibwa people are a group of indigenous people in North America. They are referred by many as people as Turtle Island people. They live in Canada and the United States and are one of the largest indigenous ethnic groups north of the Rio Grande. I believe that they emanate from the St. Lawrence River area. I grew up in Montreal, so right where I grew up is where they emanated from. The people traditionally speak the Ojibwa language, a branch of the Algonquin language family. They are part of the Council of Three Fires, which include Algonquin, Nipissing, Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi. So we're going to learn a lot about the Ojibwa tribe through Violet, and in essence, we are going to break down our isms and how destructive they can be and how they can limit us and our growth in creating a more unified human race. So I'll just wait for her to call in and let me know when she does call. We're going to be taking some calls tonight, although we are going to limit the calls because there's just a lot to discuss, and I want to make sure that Violet can get her story out. So if there's a question or two, if we have time, we will take the call, and if hopefully she does know how to call in. And Violet, please call if you're listening. We're waiting for your call in, and this could be a very, very interesting discussion. And great, thank you so much. Hi, Violet, how are you? Hello? Violet, are you there?
Me?
Hi.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you so much for creating the concept of the show and for being courageous enough to come on air with me and discuss racism and racism from your perspective, and racism as a particular breed, if you will, of narcissism. And thank you also for the wonderful comments and questions. So just tell me a little bit more about the Ojibwa people, and tell me if I'm pronouncing it correctly, please.
Yes. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to speak on your show. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this.
Okay.
So the Ojibwe people, we originate from eastern North America. Mm-hmm. And we split off. Part of us became the Saulteaux, and we migrated further west to Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and further west. and part of our people stayed in Eastern Ontario and Eastern United States.
Okay, what about up in Alaska? Did you migrate as far as Alaska?
No, that's more Haida Indians, Haida First Nations, yes.
Okay, and you know what's interesting? Having lived in Montreal, Canada for over 12 years, I grew up right on the St. Lawrence River, Montreal, Canada. Do you know that they never taught me anything about the Ojibwe people? Not a thing.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Yeah.
Yes, things are slowly changing, I think, now, and I'm so very, very glad that many systems, education systems, media systems, are beginning to change, and that's a very wonderful thing.
Yeah, and we're fortunate enough to have this medium, the YouTube medium, to disseminate information and to bring to people's conscious awareness what happens when the cracked lens of perception is basically hindering our growth as a human race. And so I'm going to jump into some questions, and please elaborate. And if there's anything else you want to say about the history of the people, do, because people, for the most part, know nothing about this tribe, your tribe.
All right. Yes. Okay.
Okay, so as a First Nations from Canada, what's your experience of racism?
As an Ojibwe First Nations woman, my experience of racism is not just my experience alone, but has been a collective experience. Because there is more than one perspective involved, I feel I cannot discuss my experience without also bringing forward the perspectives of my adoptive family, as well as the historical perspectives of our country. Consequently, in making room for one perspective without considering the whole, the results can often be biased and one-sided.
And that fits very much with my view of systems gone wrong. So we have to take into consideration the different systems involved. So we've got the tribal system, then we've got the Caucasian system, then we have politics and so on. How old were you when you were adopted?
My biological mother gave me up for adoption when I was 2, and I was adopted when I was 2.5.
Okay, and what happened between 2 and 2.5?
I was put into foster care.
Okay, so being that you know a little bit about the mind map, yes, attachment theory, because I know you've been listening to some of the shows. Let's go all the way back to Bowlby and what he has to say about children who do have a rupture in attachment. And you had more than a rupture. You were with your biological mother for 2 years on whatever level, bonding to her. And then at age 2, when you were already beginning to speak, and of course you were able to walk and you were developing consciousness and interpreting the world, you then got put into foster care. So what's the message there immediately?
The message that I received, I do have memory of this, and psychologically, children associate abandonment with death. And when my mother gave me up for adoption, I remember the day in the social worker's office when she held me on her lap and said goodbye, and then passed me to the social worker and turned around and walked out of the room. And her behavior, her body language was unmistakable. It was I knew what was going on. I understood what was going on. I kind of experienced the level, it was kind of like a death. It's the only way I can really describe it. and children can't rationalize it. They can only surrender to it in order to physically survive. And I actually saw a gray shadow come up over the room and come up the wall. It came up the wall from the floor and covered the room, and it passed over me. And as I say, like when my mother gave me up for adoption, I didn't receive her actions as a noble sacrifice, as I later forced myself to see them as. As a child, I received her actions as a rejection of life itself.
When you were living with her, do you remember any bonding taking place, or was she already distanced from you prior to?
I don't. The only memory I have of her is when she was holding me on her lap in the social worker's office, and she was crying. And that's the one memory that stayed with me throughout my entire childhood, is that. But I couldn't see her face. Her face was clouded over, but I could see her shoulders and her hair. Yeah. But her face, I kind of blocked it out.
And where was your biological father?
He was not involved in the picture.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Okay. So there are no words to describe that experience. I mean, the closest that I can come to that is when I talk about the hole in the soul.
Yeah, that's, you're absolutely correct. It did open in me a great big chasm.
Yes.
And it was. And the level of shame of having that experience, that's all I can say, is being really ashamed that I must have done something wrong.
Well, there it is, and I talk about this in my book, Be the Cause, Healing a Human Disconnect. I refer to Alice Miller, who says that a child would rather be the bad child in a good world and blame him or herself than to think that there's something wrong with the parents, because that would make for a paranoid world. So, and also it brings a little bit more of a locus of control to the child, because if you think that shame on you, you're a bad girl, you did something wrong, then there's still that hope that if you do something right, maybe you can reverse it. It's amazing that children always revert to themselves as being the cause, at fault, to be shamed and to be blamed. And there you are at age 2.5, and that's happening. That you're not thinking, children don't think something really wrong here. What's wrong with a mother or a system that would sever a relationship with the child? We don't think that way at that particular age. So there was the beginning of that dark shadow and the defenses, and things didn't get much better afterwards, did they?
Well, yes and no. Like I was adopted into after I spent some time in foster care, and it was my biological mother's foster mother. Like it was her foster mother. So she was already introduced to me. She was already familiar with me, and I was already familiar with her. So I think social services thought that was the best place for me to be, having somebody that I already knew until I was adopted.
And you were there for half a year?
Yes, I think I was there for about 4 to 6 months.
Okay. And then along came a Caucasian family, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so can you clarify what you mean when you say that your experience of racism was not just your own?
Yes. What I mean when I say that my experience of racism was not just mine is that racism is a collective experience. Yeah. Both perpetrator and receiver are victims of ignorance. Okay. Having said this, I feel it is fair to say that my family has been just as much a victim of ignorance as I have. In the research I have done to help me understand the complexity of my experience as an Ojibwe adoptee, I discovered the work of Jane Elliott.
Okay.
Jane Elliott is a retired Caucasian school teacher from the United States who has dedicated her life to educating people about racism. In my opinion, Jane Elliott connects racism to narcissism by distilling the behavior of racism into 3 freedoms. The first freedom that Jane Elliott states that races have is the freedom to be ignorant about any other culture that is different from theirs, or about anyone with skin color that isn't the same as theirs. The second freedom that races have is the freedom to deny their ignorance. And the third freedom that races have is the freedom from being accountable from how they impact people through their words and their actions.
I like the use of the word, the freedom to be ignorant, right? The freedom. It's just this total lack of responsibility. You know, one of the hallmarks of mental health and the way I think about mental health and the mind map system is the ability to self-reflect and self-correct and own your own stuff, basically. So the freedom to be ignorant, there it is, this inability to even take responsibility for the fact that we're ignorant. And then the permission, right? The permission to discriminate along the lines of skin color, and then the permission to not even be accountable for any of it at all. So speaking of a blind spot, it's a very big blind spot. Can you clarify further how you feel that racism and narcissism are connected? You know, I speak a lot about narcissism as a system gone wrong, a system of demeaning and devaluing and destroying. And so if you would be so kind as to relate racism to narcissism so people can understand better.
Yes. To clarify the connection of these behaviors, both behaviors need to be defined. Narcissistic personality disorder is defined by psychology today as the inability to regulate self-esteem without external validation and low empathy. Racism, by comparison, is defined by Oxford Dictionary as prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against someone of a different race based on the belief that one's own race is superior.
Okay, so yes, go ahead.
In my opinion, the connection between these two behaviors is the numbers. While narcissism is a form of self-obsession that is experienced by an individual, racism is a similar kind of obsession, but racism is experienced by a group of people or a collective entity, such as a family, a community, or a country.
So it's as though these racist concepts, the demeaning, the devaluing, the destroying, the lack of empathy, all of this is being projected. Okay, I'm going to point to panel 6 for a moment. Projected on a particular group of people. And what that does for the perpetrator is it makes that person feel superior. So going back to the root cause of narcissism, it's a system gone wrong. So if a person is not given the emotional goodies in the first few years of life, if they're not esteemed and made to feel good enough, then what they might do with that is project their low self-esteem onto other people. So how convenient. Now we can do it on a global scale, right? We could just say, well, this group of people, because they have dark skin, for example, or if they're a different religion, different whatever it is. Now we get to do that. And the ugliness is that now we also get to reinforce this on a groupthink basis. So that makes it even more okay. Everyone else thinks that that person is inferior. So, I'm not unusual. And so there's more permission there to see it that way, just by virtue of the fact that everyone's many are mirroring the same.
Yes.
I also want to address a couple of other things. Well, I want to learn more about you, Violet. Okay, so here you are, 2.5 years old, and you do have memory. What was it like to meet your adoptive family? What was your first impression?
It was overwhelming. First Nations, we operate predominantly by what is called osmosis. So there's not a lot of talking. It's just watching, listening, looking at the body language, feeling the people and feeling. And so I was more trying to feel these new people out and feel if I was safe. And
And what were you feeling? Were you feeling safe? Were you feeling you weren't fitting in? What were you feeling?
Since my day that my biological mother had given me up, as I said, that opened up a really large chasm inside of me and left me really, really wounded, like for a long time. I was kind of in a broken, weepy state for many, many years of my childhood after that. So meeting my new family, even though I felt what I felt, I didn't, they felt I was really scared. My adoptive father, when they first adopted me, I could feel that he resented me. It was just in his eye contact and the way that he looked at me, the way he spoke to me. It was just certain energy in the communication. You can, a person can feel it.
So you were feeling the projection of his racism directly on you.
Yes. But I didn't recognize it as racism. I just thought I was further continuing to do wrong, I just wasn't wrong. It just made me feel totally wrong. The adoption and everything else from that point made me feel wrong.
So you would hope that being adopted would start a reparative process, and it just didn't do that at all. Maybe in some ways it did. I think your relationship with your adoptive mother was better, yes?
Yes. It was very difficult. Overall, as a child, growing up in my family, I can say that I didn't feel received. It was clear to me, as I said, that my adoptive father didn't want me. By the time I was 4 years old, my adoptive parents separated and divorced. After the divorce, I saw less and less of him until he disappeared out of my life forever.
So let's draw a parallel process that culturally, your tribe was not wanted by we'll call it the Canadian people, Caucasian people. And so when you got into the micro version, it was the same thing. So in essence, it was ripping open childhood wounds of not being wanted. So whatever way you turn, I refer to this concept called the double dungeon of darkness. You can't turn to your mother because your biological mother abandoned you from your point of view, and she did. She turned around and walked out the door. And then your biological mother, well, somewhere in there you knew that she chose a racist adoptive father. So how safe was that she brought in a an enemy into the camp, so to speak. So, and then you had, I think you have Caucasian adoptive siblings. Is that right?
Yes. When I was adopted into my new family, I had two Caucasian brothers that were my adoptive parents' biological sons, and one older sister who was Cree, and she was also adopted several years before me from a totally different family.
I see. And did you feel a sense of camaraderie with her?
No, my sister and I, although we were both Aboriginal adoptees, we didn't have similar experiences.
I see.
My sister was more, I feel, from my what I observed and from what I experienced, I feel that my sister was more readily received by our new family and community than I was.
And why is that?
Maybe it was because my sister was adopted when she was 3 months old and had bonded with our adopted parents more intimately.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was because my older sister did not have 2 years of imprinting from her biological family like I had.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was because my sister had very fair skin and the dominant culture did not detect her ancestry unless she informed them of it. So, however, because of my appearance, I am obviously First Nation.
So everything was highlighting your difference. So there was no sense of inclusionary, really. Maybe a little bit from your adoptive mother, but certainly not from your adoptive father, and certainly not from the community. So I'm just curious why you chose the title that you chose for this discussion, and can you illustrate how the title is connected to your experience of racism?
Yes, I can. To give a clear illustration on how the title connects to my experience, I must touch momentarily on the history of Canada. Historically, as far back as the 1830s, the Canadian government enacted policies which ultimately resulted in the 1876 Indian Act. These policies aimed to bring about the total cultural transformation of the Indian by assimilating the Indians into the white culture. For those who do not know what the word assimilation means, the etymology of the word assimilation is derived from Old Latin French, and it means the process of becoming alike or identical. Furthermore, residential schools, which were government-sponsored religious schools, were the cornerstone of the assimilation policy. It's important to note that although the Indian Act has been since amended, there continues to remain strong traces of this systemic racism nationwide.
So basically, as I understand it, they're really wiping out your entire cultural identity. They're forcing you to take on someone else's language, somebody else's religion, someone else's culture. There's no acknowledgement, so there's no sense of pride. There's no preservation of history. There's no preservation of cultural values. And so this is kind of like, I don't know, the best way I can see it now is like a de-souling of your people.
Yes, it was. It was a form of, I hate to use the word, but I'm going to use it, genocide. A form of cultural genocide.
Agreed. Yes, and there was nothing that you and and your people could do about this because they weren't in a position of power, were they? So they were completely at the effect of what were they supposed to do? Start a revolution?
No, see, that's the irony of this. Is that here I'm just going to look at the research. The irony of this that everything worked well because of what I have come to know as the ethic of non-interference.
Wait, you're breaking up a little bit. Sorry. Can you repeat that? Say that again?
It's called the way that, yes, it's called the ethic of non-interference.
Of non-interference. So what is that supposed to mean? Mm-hmm.
This is, I discovered this when it's called with a.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, audience. It is breaking up a little bit. We'll just do the best we can because this is such an important discussion. The ethics of non-interference. You mean this was the ethics of your people? To not interfere? Are you there? Hello? You know what?
Pardon?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
Yeah, you know what? I'd like to suggest that if you could please hang up, okay, and call back, and I'm hoping that it'll be a clearer connection.
Oh.
Can we try that, please?
Oh, we'll call you right back.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Yeah, what a shame. I really want everybody to hear this because it's so important, and this is just a sample of racism. We can substitute the word Ojibwa for any other race, any other people, because this is what we're doing as a human race. We are projecting on each other and isolating each other. Okay, let's try it again, Violet. Hi.
Hey, I hope I'm coming in here.
It's still a little bit choppy, but we'll do our best. So continue on, and I'll try to pick up the words and repeat them, and we'll clarify. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. The ethic of parents, probably one of the oldest and one of the most invasive of all ethics by Native people who lived by. It's been 25,000 years, not been well articulated.
You know, it's so choppy. Here's what I'm going to do about it, because you were so kind to write out a lot of this discussion. I'm going to read some of it so that it could be clear, and then we'll kind of try to pick up some information from you, okay? And I'm so sorry. It's just so choppy, okay? So I'm just going to read some of your words. To give a clear illustration of how the title connects to your experience, let's touch on the history of Canada. We covered some of the 1830s Canadian government enacted policies which ultimately resulted in the 1876 Indian Act. These policies aimed to bring about the total cultural transformation of the Indian by assimilating the Indians into white society. Okay, and so again, we could substitute out this situation for so many examples of this, where another race comes in and tries to wipe out another race through narcissism, superiority, demeaning, devaluing, destroying another culture. And we lose so much by it, because instead of creating a synergistic human race and making our human race richer because we're incorporating other people's culture and language and history, and instead of creating a united humanity of interconnection, we're really doing quite the opposite, and the Canadian government was doing quite the opposite. So let me just go on. For those who do not know what the word assimilation means, the etymology of the word assimilation is derived from Old Latin French, and it means the process of becoming alike or identical. Wow. Let's just homogenize everyone. Let's just turn music into muzak and turn human beings into some sort of a blend of something or other. Furthermore, residential schools, which were government-sponsored religious schools, were the cornerstone of assimilation. Note that although the Indian Act has since been amended, there continues to remain strong traces of this systemic racism nationwide. Okay, let's try you speaking and see if it's still breaking up. Let's give it a shot. Go on.
So, apparently, these policies affected my ancestors. My mother.
You know
the
what?
last
It's still doing it. So again, with your permission, I'm gonna use your words to continue. So just for the sake of clarity, and hopefully you'll be back on the show, and we'll try to figure out a better way to communicate so that it doesn't chop up the words. It's almost ironic.
Call you right back.
You want to try? Call me right back, and I'll go on with the words. Okay, evidently these policies greatly affected her ancestors. Her biological mother, who was the last full-blooded Ojibwa of lineage, was placed into residential school along with her closest siblings by her parents, who were also culturally broken and struggling alcoholics. And let's give it another shot with her calling in. Okay, I'll just continue on. Still, do you see the hole in the soul, the brokenness? It's almost like they're breaking these people down, and then they have to fill their hole in the soul.
Hello, you've reached Joanne. Please leave a message, and I'll call you right back.
Okay,
Thanks.
that's not happening. So
after leaving a message, you can hang up or press pound for more options.
Hang that one up. Okay. Hey, Violet, whoever's on the phone. Hello? Okay. I'll just go on because she wrote this out so clearly. I want you to catch these words. So the alcoholism is the people's way of protecting themselves. There were so many boundary violations here. In residential school, her biological mother, along with her siblings, were severed from their cultural identity. This is a way of isolating and denying and ultimately degrading, and their natural psychology. When she returned home many years later, she was further assaulted as she discovered that what of her culture she had known before going to residential school had been removed. Wow. Okay. Violet, are you back?
I am back. Hello.
Okay, let's try that. I think that sounds better. Okay, keep going.
It had been removed, and she saw that her mother and father were lost deep inside of their addictions to alcohol, as they were also culturally broken.
Yeah.
And then when my biological mother was 19, she got pregnant and gave birth to me. Okay. But by the time I was 2, she did not believe she was capable of being a mother, and she gave me up for adoption.
Okay, so intellectually you understand that this is a multi-generational tragedy, so that your people were so desouled, they were so demeaned, devalued, and destroyed that at the fiber of their being, they were being broken down, and so they had no capacity to parent. And this is the tragedy. And so you were at the effect of this tragedy. So the way I think is, I do think system gone wrong. So if we isolate it, we could say, oh, horrible mother gave up her baby, horrible situation, horrible people, they chose to use alcohol. But if you look at it in the context of the mind map, you can see that these cultural wounds created horrible reactions, horrible encodings of self-esteem, and really brought down the essence of the people. And so that when it came to panel 5, defense mechanisms, how the heck were they supposed to defend themselves? Because nobody stood up for them. Nobody was mirroring any sense of cultural greatness or historical greatness. On the contrary. So it makes sense that they broke down and used alcohol as a way to quell the pain. And thank goodness I could hear you now, so now you could take over the discussion. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. No, but that's exactly right. Thank you so much for reflecting on that, because that's exactly correct.
Yeah, and we have to be careful with those things because we have to contextualize it. That, people could just say, "Oh, look at those people. They're horrible alcoholics. Keep away from them." It's just that when we look at it from a systems point of view, the Caucasian race and Canadian policies, and so that there was the cause from a macro point of view, correct? So we've got the cause, we've got the effect, and who benefits? Obviously nobody.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly correct.
Right.
That's right.
Okay. So yeah.
So this brings us to so then me being adopted, also this form of assimilation of First Nations children who were removed from their families and adopted into non-Aboriginal homes has now been recognized, in 2017, has been recognized as an act of racism and has been termed the 60s scoop.
So I'm wondering, how did they see the light? So what shifted in terms of this cracked lens of perception of, oh, this is perfectly okay, let's just take, annihilate the culture, to, wow, we're racist. How did that revelation come about? What happened?
It came about some people like me that had been adopted from their heritage and into non-Aboriginal homes, had stood up in 2010 and 2011. One plaintiff was from Ontario and the other from British Columbia, and they filed class action lawsuits against the Governor General of Canada for all of this, and it was heard. It was heard before the courts and been now recognized and is now being compensated.
So what's the compensation?
I think it's 80 million across Canada.
Okay, and who gets the money? Who gets the money?
The lawyers get most of the money, of course, and then the rest gets divided into to all of us, depending on how many plaintiffs there are per province.
And how many people are we talking about who have, let's say, class action sued against the government?
Yeah, I don't know. That's the whole thing, is that as much as I asked questions, not only to my band, but also to the class action lawyers that were involved, I didn't get a lot of answers. It kind of seemed like the plaintiffs were sort of kept apart from each other. you know,
it's so...
And I thought, well...
I mean, I was getting optimistic about the consciousness of the Canadian government, and then when you say this, it just seems almost like an empty victory. In other words, they wanted to look good in the face of the tribal people, the Ojibwa people, but they didn't really deliver. It's like another form of narcissism, acting as if they're great guys and they've seen the light, and now they're recognizing their narcissism and racism, and then not really cleaning it up, but acting as if they are, and then blocking the real taking responsibility for it, or at least the attempt to, because money's not going to do it. I mean, there's just so much destruction there. Handing out some bills is not going to bring your culture back and bring the esteem back and take away the damage. You know, in the mind map system, one of the things that I do with my patients is I hold our mommy and daddy and multi-generations of family responsible for the damage, not as a blame or shame thing, but just as a way of cleaning up the mess. And so they started to sound like they were doing it, but I don't see the real deal, the real repair here. Do you? Am I missing something?
I have to agree. Like I do have to agree on that. It is an attempt, I think, at Canada to recognize, but true change really takes time.
Yeah.
And and I think a reconciliation, is it takes two. And I think that there's so much more that needs to be done, not only from the Canadian government too, but I think a lot of I can't really speak for I can't speak for anybody else. I can only speak for me. I'm getting out of this what I put into it, and I have spent many years in healing, in counseling, taking workshops, sweat lodges, just all of it, even my faith in Jesus Christ, all of it, everything, to really learn and understand from a collective. Because this isn't just about me. This is about everybody. And I think if more people get on board for their own healing, if everybody did that, everything would transform. Not overnight, but it would. People would become more self-aware, more aware of how they impact others. Yes. Yes. And more aware of how my words impact other people. It's just about self-awareness.
It's very...
which takes a lot of courage.
I was just going to say that it's really, really difficult to not be affected and infected by caustic eyes when you've got racist eyes on you, when you've been severed from your mother, your family of origin, and your culture, and going back to the Alice Miller concept that you feel that it's all your fault, then you're going to end up with some pretty nasty negative core beliefs. And so if you were to take a guess at your own core beliefs and maybe the core beliefs of your people, what do you think this left your people and you with at the core?
Oh my gosh, absolutely shattered. Not knowing what our cultural identity is, not even trusting my own, how I read society. It took me years to learn that because I believe that I was so wrong that even my own intuition can't be trusted.
Yes.
So it's like a self-rejection on top of a rejection.
Yeah, and that's the core that I'm talking about, that self-rejection where I'm thinking that at the core there's a message that you don't count. You don't count at all.
Yes.
Not important, but beyond not important, that you're just a nothing. You're just to be absorbed. You're just an object to be absorbed by the prevailing culture. And, at best, you just have to kind of fit in and mold yourself so you don't get to be your authentic self. So there's just no authenticity.
Yes. Oops, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so this is huge, and I admire that you're still involved in shining the truth light politically, and I'm saddened that they didn't do more to repair this, and that these gestures weren't really acted upon appropriately by at least making financial reparation and putting the money into the hands of the people. Okay, I'd like to see that. I'd like to hear about that money and where that money went, and not just to the lawyers. I know we're very short on time. We only have about 5 minutes left to our segment, but in conclusion, we can see that this process is not only showing up in your case, it's showing up all over the world. And for those of you who want to comment on this, I welcome your comments. Go to my website, Healing Global Disconnect. It's not the most developed website, but at least you can put your comments there and read the philosophy. And it is really time that we come together as a united humanity and see the richness in other people's language, culture, history, stories, music, art, and bring that to us as a human race, as opposed to annihilate that. I really appreciate you coming on air. I have a song that I want to share with everyone. Will you please come back and inform more? Because
yes.
this
Could I
say
over. One final thing?
Please.
I just wanted to say, just to put the cap on this, is that I chose this title because my experience felt like a one-sided experience, because my family wasn't required to understand me. Basically, my family didn't know that they didn't know. And
that blind spot, huge.
Pardon me? Yes,
huge
a blind spot. That's
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
That's it. And I'm coming on this show as I just hope that anything out of this helps anybody that's listening. Language, although we may speak English, we don't necessarily speak the same language, and it's taken me many years to develop the language to understand what happened. And so I just really hope that if this helps anybody, that means a lot to me.
I know it will, and this is a worldwide issue, and we are global. We go global. People call in and listen in from countries. So yes, we will continue this discussion. I really appreciate it. I'll take just a couple minutes to shrink the tune, and this tune is by Bob Marley, and it's titled War. And I'll start in with the lyrics. If we have to stop, we'll stop. Until the philosophy which holds one race superior and another inferior is finally and permanently discredited and abandoned, everywhere is war. Me say war, that until there's no longer first-class and second-class citizens of any nation, until the color of a man's skin is of no more significance than the color of his eyes, me say war. That until the basic human rights are equally guaranteed to all, without regard to race, war. That until that day, the dream of lasting peace, world citizenship, rule of international morality will remain in but a fleeting illusion to be pursued, but never attained. Now everywhere is war, war. And until the ignoble and unhappy regimes that hold our brothers in Angola, in Mozambique, South Africa, subhuman bondage, and let's also include your people, have been toppled, utterly destroyed, while everywhere is war. Me say war. War in the east, war in the west, war up north, war down in the south, war, war. Rumors of war, and until that day, the African continent, and I'll include all continents, will not know peace. And we know we shall win, as we are confident in the victory of good over evil. And that concludes a reflection of a song that reflects what we've been talking about. So everyone, go to healingglobaldisconnect.com and let's work on the consciousness of creating a united humanity. And we will continue this discussion. Thank you so much, everyone, and I will see you next week. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Night.
Appreciate it.